Here's a headline you don't see every day. Footage shot in Manitoba shows a Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, on the shore of the Nelson River. That's 500 kilometers north of Winnipeg. The ferry operator who shot the video showed it to some people in his community, but won't give it to anyone in the media just yet. But Missy Flett saw the video. Here's what she saw.
The Sasquatch was approximately 8 to 10 feet tall, and I'm guessing maybe 3 to 4 feet wide. It was dark brown in color, and it had very long arms and kind of long hair. It looked very human-like, but it definitely wasn't a human.
Dr. Jeff Meldrum is from Idaho State University. He's an anatomist. He has studied Bigfoot's tracks. So, Dr. Meldrum, I know you haven't seen this video yet. Do you think it's worth checking out?
Well, certainly. From the description I've read, and especially if it is corroborated with documented footprints, most definitely it should be investigated.
Now, you are particularly interested in the footprints. To your mind, are they the best evidence for the existence of this creature?
Well, I think they really are, because as trace evidence of the physical being itself, we can evaluate them in a fairly objective way and determine the likelihood of whether these footprints were left by a living animal or some sort of artifice.
Given, I guess, the certainty that some of them are hoax, could you walk us through what you've seen in the footprints that convinces you the animal might be out there?
Right. Within the sample that I've dealt with, there's a large proportion of footprints that exhibit a consistent suite of characteristics. Here's an example of one typical Bigfoot track that very well illustrates two important characteristics: the flat nature of the footprint and its tremendous breadth for its length. In addition to that, however, some footprints, such as this one, exhibit a marked pressure ridge that indicates midfoot flexibility of the foot in a nature that is unlike the human foot, which has a very stiff longitudinal arch.
So do you think then that this creature would actually have a different configuration of foot bones?
Well, no, the individual foot bones would all be there. The difference would essentially be in the way in which those bones interact. The human foot is modified from a generalized primate foot, as you can see here in this human foot skeleton model. The distinguishing characteristic of the human foot is the longitudinal arch that provides a rather rigid platform. And other primates, however, have a very flat foot that's rather flexible, allowing it to bend across the where our instep would lie, at what's called the transverse tarsal joint. That allows the foot to act both as a prehensile organ and a propulsive organ.
Now, when you say prehensile, do you think that a creature that leaves footprints like that could actually use its feet like hands?
Well, not to the extent that we use our hands with an opposable grip to grasp objects and so forth, but to the extent that we can wrap our fingers around a pole, say, to hoist ourselves up in a pull-up. This foot has toes that are proportionately much longer than the human foot exhibits. In fact, a typical 14 or 15-inch Sasquatch track will have toes that are virtually as long as my fingers, which means that it's capable of grasping an object nearly as well as I could in the absence of my thumb with my remaining fingers.
It's totally intriguing that you can see these sort of commonalities among footprints. Is it possible, though, that somehow hoaxers just managed to lay down footprints that by chance make some sort of anatomical sense?
Well, if it was just sort of a random occurrence, I think you might resort to that explanation. But when I encounter a persistence that spans 4 decades and geography spanning across the continent, that's pretty compelling that these footprints originate from a unrecognized species rather than represent spurious unrelated hoaxes.
Now, Dr. Meldrum, most sightings or most evidence for Sasquatch or Bigfoot happens in the western states and British Columbia and Canada. Does the foot that you've looked at so closely fit that kind of environment?
It certainly does, and that's another elegant aspect. How is it that a hoaxer would just stumble upon that configuration that would seem most appropriate to the habitat in which these animals live in. This combination of rather prehensile toes and an elongated heel for increased leverage of a flexible foot is very adapted to the steep, broken terrain in which these animals find themselves. Much more efficient than a human foot would be.
Nonetheless, Dr. Meldrum, there's been no body, no living or dead Sasquatch, and I'm sure that holds a lot of people back from believing in them, and they've been, there's been a search on for them for many decades. How long do you think people will still continue to believe if there's no actual body?
Well, as a scientist, the issue of whether one believes or not is really a non-issue. It's not a matter of belief, which is an expression of conviction in the absence of evidence. It's rather, does the evidence warrant continued investigation? And even in the absence of definitive proof in the form of a type specimen, of a physical body, I'm quite convinced that this evidence warrants serious pursuit of this investigation.
Thanks, Dr. Meldrum.
You're quite welcome.
We will see what the video reveals. Dr. Jeff Meldrum is an anatomist at Idaho State University. He has studied the footprints of Bigfoot or Sasquatch.